Okay, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something kind of unique.
Yeah.
A collection of letters written by Ellen G. White to her sons
Oh, wow.
back in the mid-1800s.
Okay.
And, these aren't your typical "how are you"
Right.
letters.
Right.
These are pretty in-depth and fascinating glimpses into her life and her relationship with her sons.
Yeah, what's so fascinating to me is the historical context, right? Like no texting, no quick calls.
Right.
Just imagine waiting to receive a letter,
Oh, yeah.
knowing it traveled for days, maybe weeks, across difficult terrain back then.
Oh, absolutely.
These letters weren't just communication, they were a lifeline across distance and time.
And travel itself was such a huge undertaking back then, too.
Oh, totally.
I mean, Ellen describes these journeys through deep snow, and she even mentions a day when all she had to eat was a single apple.
Wow.
That level of hardship really puts things into perspective.
It does.
It's not just about the lack of instant communication.
What?
It really reveals a world where just everyday life was a challenge that we can barely grasp today.
Yeah, I mean, you get a sense of that in one of the letters she wrote from Iowa.
Okay.
She talks about how thankful she'll be to see home sweet home again and my three dear boys, Henry, Edson, and Willie.
Oh.
You can practically hear her longing for them in her words.
Yeah, you really can.
And keep in mind, this separation wasn't just for, a quick business trip or something.
Right.
Ellen G. White was a prolific writer and a key figure in the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
That's right.
Her work took her away from home for extended periods, which added another layer of complexity to her relationship with her sons.
Yeah, that makes these letters even more precious, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Because they weren't just casual updates. They were a way for her to still be a mother from afar, shaping her sons' characters and imparting her values even when she was physically separated.
Exactly.
So I think before we go too much further, we should probably just clarify for everyone listening.
Okay.
Who exactly was Ellen G. White?
Yeah, good point.
Because I know some of our listeners might not be familiar with her beyond these letters.
Right. So in a nutshell, Ellen G. White was a leading figure in the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Right.
She's best known for her extensive religious writings.
Okay.
But what we're seeing in these letters is a much more intimate side. The woman behind the public persona, a mother grappling with the very real challenges of parenting during, a really turbulent and transformative time in American history.
And let's not forget, she was a woman navigating a male-dominated world,
Absolutely.
making her voice and her influence even more remarkable.
Oh, for sure. And her letters give us a glimpse into that world, too.
Yeah.
For instance, she mentions being grateful to sisters Jenny and Martha for caring for her sons while she was away.
Oh, right.
This was a time when women's roles were largely confined to the domestic sphere. Yet we see these women stepping up to support each other, forming a network of care that allowed Ellen to pursue her work.
It's a reminder that it takes a village, right?
It really is.
And that sense of community really shines through in so many of her letters.
It does, and it's also crucial to remember the religious climate of the time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The mid-1800s was a period of intense religious fervor in America.
Right.
With new denominations emerging and existing ones undergoing significant shifts. Ellen G. White's letters reflect this,
Yeah.
showcasing her deep conviction and her fervent desire to guide her sons towards a spiritual path.
Which brings us to those fears about her son's spiritual well-being, right?
Exactly.
I mean, some of the things she writes are pretty intense, like, would you be prepared to die?
Wow.
It's like, that's pretty heavy stuff for a young boy to read.
It might seem jarring to us today,
Yeah.
but it really reflects the prevailing religious beliefs of the era.
Right.
The concept of heaven and hell, of eternal salvation or damnation, was a very real and present concern for many people.
Yeah.
And for Ellen G. White, ensuring her son's salvation was paramount. It was a driving force behind much of her advice and counsel.
It adds this whole other dimension to the anxieties any parent feels, right?
Oh, it does.
It's not just about your kids doing well in school or staying out of trouble.
Right.
It's about their eternal fate.
And this ties into a point that I think is crucial for understanding these letters.
Okay.
Ellen G. White saw God's hand in everything.
Wow.
It wasn't just about Sunday church services.
Okay.
It was about living a life guided by faith every single day.
So even when she's talking about seemingly mundane things like, being neat and tidy,
Exactly.
there's this deeper spiritual dimension to it.
Precisely, orderliness wasn't just about good housekeeping.
Right.
It was about reflecting God's order in one's life.
Okay.
Honesty wasn't just about following rules, it was about aligning oneself with God's truth.
Yeah.
Her parenting advice was deeply intertwined with her faith.
Which is why she so often talks about things like resisting temptation and choosing the right path.
Exactly, for her moral guidance was inseparable from spiritual guidance.
So how do we bridge that gap for modern listeners who might not share her specific beliefs?
That's a great question.
Because there is a lot of wisdom in these letters that goes beyond any particular religion.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because while the language might be rooted in 19th century religious beliefs,
Yeah.
the underlying principles, things like honesty, kindness, self-control, perseverance,
Right.
these are timeless values that transcend any specific faith.
Right. Even her emphasis on understanding one's temperament and developing self-control.
Yes.
That resonates with modern psychology and the concept of emotional intelligence.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to explore as we dive deeper into these letters. How this mother's voice from the past, shaped by her time and her beliefs, still speaks to us today, offering timeless wisdom on parenting, character development, and navigating the complexities of life.
So let's unpack some of these gems of wisdom, shall we?
Let's do it.
We'll start with her advice on honesty and how it relates to building trust and self-esteem.
Okay.
Then we'll explore her anxieties about her son's spiritual well-being, digging into this historical context of religious beliefs in the 1800s.
Right.
And how those fears might manifest differently for parents today.
Okay.
And we'll definitely delve into those fascinating glimpses of daily life she shares.
Yes.
Like that anecdote about the unfinished room.
Oh, right.
For example, it's like stepping back in time.
It really is. It's going to be quite a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what insights we uncover together.
Me too. But before we get there, there's one more thing I wanted to highlight from these early letters.
Okay.
Just the sheer power of a mother's love.
Oh, yeah.
Even across distance and time, you can feel the depth of Ellen's devotion to her sons.
That's what makes these letters so compelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're not just historical documents. They're a testament to the enduring power of love, the sacrifices parents make, and the hopes and dreams they hold for their children.
Okay, so buckle up, listeners.
Yeah.
We're about to delve deep into a world of covered wagons and heartfelt letters and timeless parenting wisdom.
Let's dive in. One thing that really stands out to me in these letters is Ellen G. White's focus on self-awareness and emotional regulation.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see these concepts that we consider so modern being emphasized way back in the 1800s.
It's like she was ahead of her time.
It really is, and she doesn't just talk about it abstractly.
Yeah.
She uses real-life examples to really drive her point home.
No, totally. Like, give us an example.
Okay, so there's this one letter where she describes a man she knows, someone who always has to have his own way, even as an adult.
Oh, wow.
She paints him as deeply unhappy, constantly creating friction with everyone around him.
Oh, that's sad. It's almost like a cautionary tale.
It is. She's showing her sons that giving in to every impulse doesn't lead to happiness.
Right.
It leads to isolation and discontent.
And she connects this directly to the development of strong character?
Yes, she sees self-control as a key ingredient in leading a fulfilling and impactful life.
What I find really interesting is that she doesn't frame it as a matter of willpower alone.
Right.
She acknowledges that we all need help, especially when facing temptation.
That's where her faith comes in again.
Okay.
She reminds her sons that they're not alone in this struggle.
Right.
She writes, "You may not obtain the entire victory at once, but persevere, keep trying. Say, I will do right. I will resist evil, and the Lord will help me."
So it's about personal responsibility, but also recognizing that we all need support.
Yes.
Whether it's from a higher power, from loved ones, or even from our own inner strength.
Exactly. And this is where her emphasis on self-reflection becomes so important.
Okay.
She encourages her sons to regularly examine their actions, their motives, their reactions. She even gives them a sort of mental checklist to run through.
Oh, wow. What is it?
She says, ask yourself, is this right? Will it lead to evil? Will it lead to unfaithfulness? Will it lead to deception or falsehood? Shall I feel just as happy after I do this as before?
It's like a precursor to cognitive behavioral therapy.
It really is.
By prompting her sons to pause and consider the consequences of their actions, she's helping them develop impulse control and make more conscious choices.
It's truly remarkable how much her advice aligns with modern psychological principles.
It is.
And remember, she wasn't a trained psychologist.
Right.
Her insights came from her experiences as a mother, her observations of human behavior, and her deep faith.
Okay, so we've got self-control and self-reflection.
Yes.
What other practical advice does she offer her sons?
Well, one that really struck me is her focus on honesty.
Okay.
She emphasizes it over and over again, reminding her sons that being truthful is paramount even when it's difficult.
There's that passage where she calls honesty and truthfulness sacred treasures
Yes.
that should never be set aside.
Yeah.
It really shows how deeply she valued integrity.
And she understood that honesty isn't just about telling the truth in a specific situation.
Right.
It's about living a life that's aligned with your values, being someone your loved ones can depend on. It's about building trust, which is the foundation of any strong relationship.
And she's not naive about the challenges they'll face.
No.
She acknowledges that they'll be tempted, that they'll make mistakes.
Right.
But she encourages them to persevere, to keep striving for what's right, even when it's hard.
She writes, "You may be tempted and often tried, but my dear boy, it is at such a time when these lovely treasures shine and are highly prized. Cling closely to these precious traits, whatever you may be called to suffer."
It's like she's saying character is built in the tough moments when you choose to do what's right, even when it's not easy.
Exactly. And she also stresses the importance of choosing the right influences.
Okay.
She warns them about the dangers of bad company, those who might lead them astray.
She uses some pretty strong language, too.
She does.
She compares bad company to a deadly poison
Right.
that can corrupt anyone who comes into contact with it.
It highlights how aware she was of the power of social influence, especially during adolescence.
Yeah.
And she wasn't just talking about peers. She was also talking about the ideas and beliefs they encountered in the world around them.
So it's about being discerning,
Yeah.
choosing friends wisely, and also being mindful of the messages you're absorbing.
Yeah.
From books, conversations, even the news of the day.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment that supports your values and helps you stay true to yourself.
Speaking of environment, I'm curious about her thoughts on education and learning. Does she encourage her sons to pursue formal schooling?
That's a great question, and it's a bit more nuanced than a simple yes or no.
Okay.
Remember, this was a time when formal education wasn't as accessible or standardized as it is today.
Right, especially in rural America where they live.
Exactly. So while Ellen G. White valued education, it wasn't always about formal schooling.
Yep.
She saw learning as a lifelong pursuit, something that happened both inside and outside the classroom.
So what did she encourage them to learn?
Well, she emphasized practical skills.
Okay.
Things like farming, carpentry, printing, anything that would equip them to be self-sufficient and contribute to their community.
That makes sense given the time period.
It does. These were skills essential for survival and success.
But she also encouraged them to cultivate their minds.
Yes.
To read widely, to engage in thoughtful discussions.
She believed that knowledge, both practical and intellectual, was essential for living a meaningful life.
And she saw a strong connection between education and character development.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about acquiring knowledge. It was about using that knowledge to become better people, to make wise choices, and to contribute to the world around them.
Which leads us to another fascinating aspect of these letters.
Okay.
Her emphasis on kindness and compassion.
Yes.
It's clear that she wanted her sons to be not just intelligent and successful, but also good, kind, caring human beings.
And this wasn't just about being polite or well-mannered.
Right.
It was about actively choosing to be a force for good in the world.
I love that passage where she says, "It is truly noble to forgive and pass over a wrong, but it is mean and cowardly to revenge an injury."
It's such a powerful message,
Yeah.
especially in a time when violence and retribution were often seen as acceptable responses to wrongdoing.
It speaks to her belief in a higher standard of behavior.
Yes.
One rooted in empathy and understanding.
She's advocating for a different way of being in the world, one that prioritizes peace and reconciliation over retaliation.
And she connects this to her faith, reminding her sons that Jesus taught forgiveness and love for one's enemies.
Right, but even outside of the religious context,
Yeah.
her message resonates deeply. Kindness is a strength, not a weakness.
Right.
It takes courage to forgive, to choose peace over retaliation, to see the humanity in those who have wronged us.
And she recognizes that this doesn't mean being passive or letting others take advantage of you.
No.
It's about choosing a higher path, one that leads to greater inner peace and harmony.
And speaking of inner peace, she also emphasizes the importance of finding strength and solace in one's faith.
Okay.
This is where her religious beliefs come to the forefront.
Right.
But again, there's a universal message here.
Right. It's about finding something bigger than yourself, to believe in something that gives you hope and helps you through difficult times.
She writes, "You cannot be good or do right in your own strength. You must go to God and ask him for strength."
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not you share her specific beliefs,
Right.
the underlying message is relatable.
Yeah.
We all need support. We all need something to help us navigate the challenges of life.
And sometimes that support comes from unexpected places.
Oh, it does.
One thing that really touched me was how Ellen repeatedly expresses gratitude for the people who helped care for her sons while she was away.
It's a beautiful reminder that parenting is often a communal effort.
It is.
She acknowledges the sacrifices made by those who stepped in to provide care and support in her absence.
It speaks to the importance of community,
Mm.
of recognizing that we don't have to do everything alone.
Right.
And it's a reminder that asking for help is not a weakness. It's a sign of strength and wisdom.
And her appreciation for those who helped care for her sons speaks to a broader theme that runs through many of her letters,
Which is?
the importance of gratitude.
Oh, okay.
She encourages her sons to be thankful for the blessings in their lives,
Yeah.
even the seemingly small things.
There's a passage where she writes, "Cultivate a spirit of thankfulness. Look upon the bright side. Be cheerful, hopeful, and courageous."
It's a reminder that our perspective shapes our experience.
Yeah.
If we focus on the negative, we'll find plenty to complain about.
Right.
But if we choose to focus on the good, we'll find reasons to be grateful even in the midst of challenges.
And that spirit of gratitude is contagious.
It is.
When we express appreciation for others, it creates a ripple effect of positivity.
It strengthens relationships, builds trust, and makes the world a more joyful place to be.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Honesty, self-control, kindness, gratitude. What other nuggets of wisdom can we unearth from these letters?
Well, there's one more that I think is particularly relevant to our modern lives.
Okay.
Her emphasis on choosing the right path.
Okay.
In a world filled with endless options and distractions,
Yeah.
it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us what to buy, what to watch, what to believe.
Exactly.
It can be overwhelming.
And Ellen G. White reminds us that we have the power to choose our own path,
Right.
to make decisions that align with our values,
Mm-hmm.
to create a life that's meaningful and fulfilling.
She writes in one letter, "Don't feel discouraged, my children. Satan is ready to lead your young minds, but go to God. Seek him for strength. Pray much. Give your heart's best affections to him."
It's a call to be intentional, to resist the allure of easy gratification, to focus on what truly matters. And while she frames it in a religious context, the underlying message is universal.
Right.
We have the power to choose our path, to strive for what's good and right, and to create a life that's worth living.
And that's ultimately what these letters are all about, right?
I think so.
Guiding her sons toward a life of purpose, meaning, and impact.
And as we move into the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we'll explore how her advice on practical matters like orderliness and time management connect to these larger themes of character development and living a fulfilling life.
Stay tuned, listeners. We're about to uncover even more gems of wisdom from this remarkable mother's voice from the past. It's amazing to me how Ellen G. White manages to blend this practical advice with these deeper ideas about character and purpose.
Yeah.
It's not just about, like, being a good person.
Right.
It's about developing the actual habits and skills that support that goodness.
It's like she understood that good intentions aren't enough.
Right.
You need like a framework, a structure to actually live out those values in a consistent and meaningful way.
And one of the most surprising examples of this is her emphasis on orderliness and neatness.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, who knew that tidying up could be a pathway to spiritual growth?
Right. It might seem like a minor detail,
Yeah.
but for Ellen G. White, it was a reflection of a deeper order, you know,
Okay.
a commitment to bringing harmony and intentionality into like every aspect of life.
And she doesn't just tell her sons to clean their rooms.
No, she doesn't.
She goes into great detail about the differences between a slovenly boy and a neat and orderly boy,
Oh, wow.
describing their habits, their rooms, even their overall demeanor.
It's almost comical the way she paints these contrasting pictures.
It is.
But there's a real point she's making.
What's that?
Orderliness isn't just about appearances.
Right.
It's about cultivating a sense of self-discipline and responsibility.
And there's that great line she uses, "The neat, orderly, and careful boy has an invariable rule, a place for everything and everything in its place."
I love that.
It sounds so simple.
It does.
But think about the implications.
yeah.
When you have a system, when you take care of your belongings,
Mm,
you're less likely to feel overwhelmed or stressed.
right.
You can find what you need when you need it.
Exactly.
And you're more likely to be productive and efficient.
It's like she's laying the groundwork for good time management skills, too.
Oh, for sure.
Because if you're organized, you're naturally going to be more mindful of how you spend your time.
Right. And she directly addresses that as well.
She does.
Yeah, she encourages her sons to establish routines,
Okay.
to allocate time for work, for study, for leisure, understanding that a balanced life requires intentional planning.
Yeah. There's a letter where she writes, "Learn to be steady and persevering. Have a purpose in all you do and carry out that purpose."
Wow.
It's like she's giving them the tools to navigate the demands of adult life.
Yeah.
To stay focused on their goals, even when things get tough.
And in a world that's increasingly fast-paced and driven by instant gratification,
Right.
her emphasis on patience, perseverance, and delayed gratification feels more relevant than ever.
It really does.
It's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of daily life,
Yeah.
to lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But Ellen G. White reminds us that we have the power to choose how we spend our time, what we prioritize, and what we ultimately want to accomplish.
And this brings us back to her constant reminder to choose good influences and avoid bad company.
Oh, right.
It's not enough to have good habits and a structured life.
Right.
You're constantly surrounded by negativity or distractions.
She writes, "Ever have your young mind lifted up, elevated above the low, evil habits of those who have no fear of God before them?"
It's a powerful image.
It is.
It's a call to be intentional about the people we spend time with, the media we consume, the ideas we allow to take root in our minds. She understood that our environment shapes us whether we realize it or not.
It's like we're all gardeners tending to the garden of our minds, right?
Yes.
We can choose to plant seeds of positivity, kindness, and growth, or we can allow weeds of negativity, cynicism, and despair to take over.
And she was a firm believer in the power of positive thinking.
Oh, absolutely.
She writes in one letter, "You can have correct thoughts, correct ways, and can form a good, pure character."
Wow.
It's a reminder that our thoughts shape our reality.
And it's not about ignoring the negative or pretending that everything is perfect.
Right.
It's about choosing to focus on the good, to cultivate a mindset of gratitude and hope, even in the midst of challenges.
And this connects back to her deep faith.
Okay.
For her, that positive mindset stemmed from her belief in a loving God who was always guiding and supporting her.
Right.
But even for those who don't share her specific beliefs, the principle remains the same. We can choose to focus on what's right, what's good, what's possible.
And that choice, that act of intentionally shaping our thoughts and our environment,
Yes.
is ultimately what empowers us to live a life that is truly fulfilling and aligned with our deepest values.
And I think that's what makes Ellen G. White's letters so enduringly relevant.
I agree.
Despite the time that has passed, despite the differences in our modern lives, her core message remains timeless. We have the power to choose our path, to cultivate good habits, to surround ourselves with positive influences, and to create a life that reflects our highest aspirations.
And while her words were written to her sons over 150 years ago,
Yeah.
they offer a powerful blueprint for anyone seeking to live a more intentional, fulfilling, and impactful life.
So as we conclude this deep dive,
Okay?
I encourage you to reflect on what resonated most deeply with you. What wisdom from Ellen G. White's letters will you carry with you?
Yeah.
How might you apply her insights to your own life, your own relationships, your own journey of personal growth?
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of a mother's love, timeless wisdom, and the power of choice.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.